Oh, there you go.
It is 5:30. We will call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gurrola,
Present.
Councilmember Peñalosa, Councilmember Stowe, Vice Mayor Reyes,
Present.
Mayor Flores.
Present. We will now go into oral communications. This is the opportunity to address the City Council on any matter scheduled for closed session. Unless additional time is authorized by the council, all commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes. There is no oral communications, and we don't have any electronically?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. We will move to the City Council closed session items.
Thank you, Your Honor. There are 4 items before council in closed session this evening. The first pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, Council of Labor Negotiator Agency Negotiator John Lawless and Patrice Hildreth, Employee Organizations Management and Confidential Series, Porterville Peace Officer Association, and Fire Officer Series. Item 2 is Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 1, Council Legal Counsel, existing litigation, statewide traffic v. California Professional Engineering, Tulare County Superior Court Case Number VCU 284137. Item 3, Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 3, Council Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 5 cases in which facts are yet not known to potential plaintiff. And item 4, Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 4, Council Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, 2 cases.
Thank you. 5:31, we will now go into closed session. Let me know. You ready? It is 6:41. We will reconvene open session and report on reportable action taken in closed session.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, please join me. Let us continue to pray for public safety, all the firemen and law enforcement officers, for the overall protection and safety of everyone in and around our surrounding communities. Let's continue to pray for the families of Mr. Guadalupe Roman, Superintendent of Tarabella Elementary School District, and Mr. Luis Mena, their IT administrator, who began their eternal life journey in a tragic collision the eve of Thanksgiving. And join me for a moment of silence for your personal intentions. Thank you. You may be seated. We will now go into oral communications. This is the opportunity to address the council on any matter of interest, whether on the agenda or not. Unless additional time is authorized by the council, all commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes.
Brock Neely, address on record. Just another slant on things that maybe all the viewers and listeners might consider. If you take an average of $1,000 of income tax per person in the country, multiply that times 270,000. We're now out of $2.7 billion in tax revenue. That's money that we could use to put in schools, parks, help the homeless, help the veterans, build a new library for Porterville, all kinds of things. But people want to be stubborn and not wear masks. There's still people out there going to parties and everything else every night. I see them on my Snapchat, several of the teenagers from this town. Some were out in Porterville, out in Tarabella, out in Poplar, having parties. No masks, no social distancing, gulping their Buchanan scotch. It's ridiculous. People need to take responsibility for their own lives and the lives of their friends and their family. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any oral communications that were submitted or sent in?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. We will now move into the AB 1234 reports. This is the time for all AB 1234 reports required pursuant to Government Code 53232.3. The first one is the Tulare County Task Force on Homelessness. We met on Wednesday, November the 18th. This was a conference call, virtual live Zoom Facebook meeting. This meeting had begun with some technical challenges and connections. Mr. Lawless, Mr. Jason Ridenour, Ms. Claudia Calderon, and I participated. There were no public comments. There were 5 items on the agenda, which were the approval of the October 21st meeting minutes, the update on Project Room Key, and housing of the unsheltered in Tulare in response to COVID-19 pandemic. We received updates on the Eden House provided by Betsy McGovern Garcia, the Winter Warming Center provided by Susie Ward, and then updates from the cities of Tulare, Visalia, and Porterville on the homeless shelter efforts. A brief update on Project Room Key. Mr. Chaz Felix shared that it was going well and continued to push forward With 8 months of operations on Project Roomkey, they were currently working on transitioning from Roomkey to Homekey and talked about approximately 50 units, which was stated in the Roomkey conversation that 84 rooms were occupied, accommodating 122 people. This, to me, raised a flag. As you know, we are provided with the county situational reports on the metrics as to Roomkey housing. The number of the total rooms for vulnerable homeless population and the number of occupied rooms. Hold on to that thought. He went on and provided highlights at the Palm site, the Fresno area, stating that it was well underway, that they were working with Cahuilla management and putting in flooring appliances, etc., and that things were coming together, and we're thankful to the partners working with them, the Housing Authority, and they were working on 10 rooms at a time and working on getting contracts in place. Michelle Smith from the Kings Tulare Homeless Alliance commented that the county is becoming the largest emergency provider in the last 8 months. The Homeless Alliance is making the connections with agencies, and these projects could not be done without partnerships. Moving on with the Eden House update, that was provided by Mr. Patrick Isherwood, who is a new member on council in Tulare. Sharing the background of the rehab and the purchase of the Eden House located in Visalia, there are 22 rooms altogether for transitional supportive housing for mental health. He highlighted the partners and the funding. He spoke on the programming, that it was through the coordinated entry system, County of Tulare, the Alcohol and Other, County of Tulare Mental Health Services Act, Home Mental Health Systems, Workforce Referrals, and Housing Placement. The maximum population there would be 23. He provided information as to how many beds were for the City of Visalia, City of Tulare, and the county. They will continue to work toward its success to meet all of the client and partner goals. Susie Ward gave the update on the warming center. She shared that the St. Paul's Warming Center would not be open this year due to COVID, and that they were looking for ways to partner with the county for rooms available to house the homeless, and would be working with Mr. Chaz Felix to that regard. Through a PowerPoint presentation, she provided us with the information she had shared at Visalia City Council. In it was the data from last year to current. They are now a 501c3, and their title is now the Visalia Homeless Center. The goal is to develop bridges of trust. She shared that there were a total of 503 participants, stated that 329 were not enrolled in another program. Most of them were on the streets and had not gotten involved with other programs. She provided a strong emphasis with the concerns with the young between the ages of 17 and 18, and those especially vulnerable and over the age of 65. Highlighted were the partners, which was street medicine, public health, adult protective services, mental health, family services, Kings Tulare Homeless Alliance, Christian Lutheran Church, and other partners with lots and lots of volunteers. She mentioned about paid staff and that there is a security person for the night. Again, stressed with everything that they've been trying to do, then came COVID. The limitation of space makes it difficult to operate a warming center. Spacing requirements would make it difficult to operate a low-barrier shelter. The people could not store the items. They would have to keep them with them. Plus a 6-foot space distance, that does not leave them a lot of room. They had been offered the PAL building to lease, but the spacing would only allow for 20 to 25 people. They have met with public health representatives to work on an alternative plan and will continue to work with the county to secure some rooms. Donna Ortiz mentioned HHSA could work with hotels and motels. Susie Ward mentioned that their board had approached Motel 6. They were informed that they would rather have the rooms empty than to rent them out. It was encouraged to keep the conversations going. COVID has presented its challenges to all. It's been difficult to bring services to individuals. It's been a tough sell with motels because of the liability issues. the insurance liability in housing the populations that are being served. I chimed in with the question about room key. As I listened to Susie's project, I inquired about the 50 rooms. As you recall, the flag that was raised earlier, it was reported out that 84 rooms were occupied. And on the metric report for Tulare County situational report that we received, it states 133 rooms available for the population and 84 were occupied. The immediate response was that all rooms were occupied. This is not the answer I wanted to hear. The conversation continued that perhaps they could think about small contracts or further amendments. The topic of the freeze temperature surfaced. Mary Alice Escarcega from CSET expressed concern with the freezing temperature, the state of emergency and weather, city's responsibilities, questions with empty buildings. Donna Ortiz suggested to reconvene a conversation with public health and have many discussions with regard to the empty building owners to see what could be done. Susie Ward stated that her board was willing to work in freezing temperatures. I chimed in and I asked the question, what's the county's warming center policy? It was my understanding that they had one. The response I received was that they didn't think there was a policy. They didn't think that they had one, that they were not certain. The legal counsel rep would be checking on it during the meeting, and it is believed, or this issue is set by the state, rather city law than by county law. Again, not the answer I wanted to hear. Calls with regard to the warming center were coming in from the community and asking when they would be open. A lengthy discussion, several ideas and concerns. Updates from cities of Tulare, Visalia, and Porterville on the homeless shelter efforts. Leslie Caviglia from the city of Visalia provided a brief update. The update that came in from the city of Tulare, there will be a different landscape on their city council. The shelter efforts are at a standstill until the seating of members. They would be looking into a warming center, the location for the area, and all of that would be brought to discussion. When it came to Porterville, I was happy and proud to report for our city. The Porterville Welcome Center previously had opened for daytime modified services, waiting for some things that had to be approved for the fire suppression and monitoring system. But at this meeting, I was pleased to report that as of Sunday, November the 15th, the Porterville Welcome Center opened for overnight services and that all 10 emergency beds were filled within a few hours. The bridge housing beds are being filled through coordinated entry and would be filled by the end of this date, the date that we were attending the meeting, which was the date of the meeting. In addition, the Welcome Center is averaging 100 people a day, and that they have seen 540 unduplicated people since the opening, and that was from when they opened with limited services now to full services. The original capacity was 15 beds in each room, but due to COVID, they have reduced the number of beds to allow for social distancing. That concludes this report. We met at our next regularly scheduled, we will be meeting at our next scheduled meeting of December 16th. However, as you heard me expressing the report, I followed up, and it pleases me to share that I followed up with regard to Project Room Key. I sent an email to Supervisor Shuckling, who is the chair of the task force, and Mr. Chaz Felix, who is the coordinator, with the questions that I had with regard to the Project Room Key. When I questioned about the 50 rooms that were already under contract and empty, I was looking at the Project Room Key metrics listed on the attached Tulare County COVID situation report, which was dated the same date of November the 18th. It stated on the line item under the total rooms for vulnerable homeless populations reported were 133, and on the line item of occupied rooms, there were 84, the difference of 49, which is rounded to 50. If you read it, under the column where it states updated, it says as warranted. And I asked the question, why would the report say 133 rooms available and 80 rooms were occupied? So you have the difference. I asked the question too with regard to the warming center policy, because as Ms. Ward shared her concern with the warming center, the extreme cold, et cetera, that's when I asked the question whether the county had a warming center policy. Then that during the meeting, I received a message that there were none in the books from legal counsel. I sent them the link that provides for the extreme cold freeze contingency plan, which plans for the emergency actions when presented with the cold temperatures. In particular, I stated a certain phase and an emergency section, which advises the opening of warming centers when daily low temperatures are forecast by the National Weather Service of 32 degrees, etc. And I made the recommendation hoping that Mr. Lockman be invited to present at the next Homeless Task Force meeting in regard to state and county policy for extreme cold and freezing temperatures. I wanted my colleagues on the dais to know that it was important to ask the questions, that to get answers, and if anybody would like to know at another time, I did get a response, and we'll see what happens from there. Thank you for listening to me, and now we will go on to the, thank you for listening. It was quite an interesting meeting, okay? We will now go on into the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. On the 19th of November, the San Joaquin Valley Unified Air Pollution Control District met for its monthly governing board meeting. 4 items of interest at that meeting. The first item was the recognition of outgoing governing board member, Mayor Chris Vieira of Ceres, who's been on there. I think it was more than 12 years, they had said. Recognition for his time on the board. Of course, a lot of changes and improvements in the air quality since he's been on there, so it was great to say farewell as he won't be returning. We also approved for the low dust nut harvesters. I've spoken about those. Those are a new type of machinery that helps to harvest almonds, ground harvested nuts that can create quite a stir of dust when they're harvested in the traditional way. These low dust nut harvesters have become popular. It's been hard to convince people to change to this technology after years and years of tried and true other methods, but it's finally starting to catch on, and we allocated $12,866,995 of state and federal funding to invest in this incentive program to try and get the equipment out there. So look for a little cleaner air during some of the nut harvesting season. We accepted and appropriated $869,000 from the California Air Resources Board to expand the ecosystem of shared mobility in the San Joaquin Valley pilot project. So there's, if you've seen the Mio cars, there's some projects out there called Valley Flex and Valley Go, which TCAG has been one of the partners in that, as well as the San Joaquin County, Stanislaus County, Kern County. So this is just an expansion of that program, which are the cars that you can, you kind of pool or you share these cars. They go from one location to the next, so you don't have to own your own vehicle, and they're very efficient. So that was good to see money going to expand an existing program. As well as we approved up to $4 million to go into the continued implementation of the Tune-In, Tune-Up program, the vehicle repair program. It's become very, very popular, even during COVID, with the improvements they've made to make it more of a web-based application system. People can still find an effective way to repair a smog challenged car and also get guidance into any incentives to replace the vehicle should it be beyond the point of repair. So always good to see money going into that program, and it's always a popular program. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. We'll now go into the City Council Casino Ad Hoc Committee.
Thank you. Just continued meetings with continued progress reports on where we're at. They're still have some approvals pending on their end, but just kind of going over the previous discussions of the priorities and the details of the project. Kind of in a holding pattern, as I mentioned, so we're still waiting for a little bit more detail on a timeline when some other things can be determined, but yeah, it's painful to see for the waiting. It's kind of a hurry up and wait situation. So, but nothing exclusively different from anything else I've reported previously. Although we're still working on the agreements of the agreements, I suppose. Unless did I miss anything?
Okay. Thank you very much. We will now move on to the consent calendar. All consent calendar items are considered routine and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these matters unless a request is made, in which event the item will be removed from the consent calendar. All items removed from the consent calendar for further discussion will be heard at the end of scheduled matters. Council? I hear nothing, then I will entertain the motion of the consent calendar for the approval of items 1 through 8.
Move for approval of the items.
We
on
have-
the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Call for vote, please.
Councilmember Gurrola?
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa? Councilmember Stowe?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes?
Aye.
Mayor Flores?
Aye. Passes unanimous, 5-0. Thank you. Now we'll go on to scheduled matters.
Thank you, Your Honor. There are 3 scheduled matters before the council this evening. The first is the consideration of reappointments to the Transactions and Use Tax Oversight Committee, and Ms. Hildreth will provide that staff report.
I'm having technical difficulties. I'm not able to pull up my staff report, but I can go without my report, I guess. So there are 6 seats on the Transactions and Use Tax Oversight Committee that have terms that have expired. We reached out to all of those committee members to see and ascertain if there was interest in being reappointed. Of those, 4 desire reappointment, and 1 we were not able to reach, and that would be Mr. John Angel. And Mr. Mike Boudreau Sr. was not interested at this time in seeking reappointment. So what we have before you this evening is to request that you consider the reappointment of the 4 individuals, and that would be Mr. John Bilyeu, who has evinced an interest in seeking the 2-year term that we have available. Ms. Janice Kovars for a 4-year term. Ms. Margaret Stinson for a 4-year term. And Mr. Josh Soulier for a 4-year term. And then we also recommend that you direct staff to advertise the remaining 2 vacancies, and we will then bring that back to you for consideration.
Thank you very much. Council?
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that we reinstate the 4 that had desired to continue and direct staff to advertise for 2 more commissioners for this committee.
Thank you. We have a motion
I'll second the motion.
and we have a second. No further discussion. Call
Can
for-
I,
Please, go
can I
ahead.
ask that Mr. Bilyeu, is he also included in that?
Yeah, with the
Yes.
2-year
Yeah.
term.
Yes, he
Okay.
did say it. Yes. Okay. Call for vote, please.
Councilmember Gurrola?
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa?
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes?
Aye.
Mayor Flores?
Aye. Passes unanimous, 5-0. We'll move on to the next item.
Thank Thank you, Your Honor. This is, next item on order is to consider the 2021 state budget and legislation interests. The city recently received communication from State Senator Hurtado's office about potential budget and/or legislative interests that the city may have. We've been afforded some time to be able to provide those comments. The Senator's office is asking that that the city's interests be communicated to her office no later than January 19th. They wanted to get this in front of the council for their consideration and direction. Staff would be happy to prepare, consistent with the council's interests, prepare a draft letter for its approval at its next meeting if it would so seem directed. In the past, other interests that the city has expressed to the state in regards to its interests, both budgetary and legislative, have been with regards to funding support for tertiary treatment, recycled water, grant funding for local water system consolidations, grant funding for a new library and community center, enhanced funding in support of homeless housing and support services, and then the state's determination on the reuse of the former general treatment area of the Porterville Developmental Center. And those are just past interests, not meant to suggest they could continue to be, but I guess opening the floor for the council to give direction.
Thank you. Council,
Do you need council to identify one of the projects or just any of them?
Well,
it's council, it's
this
council
is kind of
direction.
unique. The senator has said has asked for you to to share with her what your budgetary or legislative interests are, so that as she's beginning the next legislative session, there may be points of legislation and/or budget requests that she makes on behalf of the city.
Correct.
Council can come up with, whatever.
And
Well, I can say all of above that we have on there, but my main thing is the tertiary treatment,
would agree.
recycling water.
I would agree.
Yeah, this is Councilmember Peñalosa. I would agree with all of the ones that we have on the list. And if there's any opportunity to make an addition where I'm not, any monies that we can get in grants for park amenities or park-related activity, I would say I would like to include that as for the senator to consider bringing more funds for anything related to parks, in addition to the Prop 68 funds that we get, of course.
Councilman Peñalosa, I'm gonna say in your life before you're a park director, that way.
did you have any?
No, I think what we heard was fine, and I think as long as the item that was mentioned along with the community center is still valid and doesn't interfere with any of our ability to operate or look for the planning of a library, I think it would be fine to include it, but if it needs to be separate, I think that would be fine as well. But the community center part, I think, is important, as well as any other park amenities, I think, are also something good to look at, as people will be wanting to get outside of the house sometime after this is all over.
Yeah, if we can get funding for to improve things at the complex, so we don't have to take it out of our money, that'd probably be good.
I am in agreement with all the additions and to keep whatever we have on here already, because I think they're all projects that are of importance.
Okay. So certainly, if I understand the council's direction, the previous interests continue forward,
Yeah.
especially emphasizing tertiary treatment, recycled water, and as well as some kind of sustainable funding for park amenities and community, potential new community center. Okay.
Correct.
And typically, we convey this usually with a letter signed by the mayor, if that's acceptable to the council. And be happy to provide a copy to the council subsequently.
You don't need a motion on this,
Fine
do
with
you?
me, sure.
Well, really just looking for direction, and really you can, it doesn't necessarily need action, but looking for direction from the council on what its
Well,
interests
then
are.
let's go with the direction to that regard. In other words, what you just stated and summarize it, and if council's okay, I'll go ahead and sign the letter,
Yeah, sounds good.
and we'll just get a copy to
Yeah,
them.
yeah, I'd be happy
Thank
to
you.
provide- Yeah, we can do it as a staff informational report. Here's a letter that was sent on behalf of the council.
Thank you very much. Okay.
All right. Next item, final scheduled matter for this evening is your regular status and review and proclamation of local emergency on COVID-19. Well, I'll begin with Governor Newsom's news conference yesterday, which talked about a drastic notice to Californians of drastic actions that it should be expecting. I got to be candid, I was expecting it today and it didn't come, but I think it's reasonable to suspect it's very soon. Could be tomorrow, could be, really don't know. And his comments were reflective of going back to the more, he called it more drastic orders as we saw in March, which was the much more restrictive stay-at-home orders. And he spoke, and it will be interesting to see if there's any data or analytics that comes along with this, because he spoke about, beyond the rising positive cases, concerns about hospitalization and especially ICUs. And kind of looking at, and I reviewed today's Tulare County situation report. There were 419 new cases reported today. And according to the report, there are currently 99 individuals hospitalized in Tulare County. 12 are in the ICU. At Sierra View, there are 21, it's reporting today, 21 hospitalized, 9 in the ICU, and 10 suspected patients. Today's situation report also indicated that the positivity rate, I previously had been talking about that, had been hovering around 5. That has now gone to 9.6% positivity rate. So what's that saying is that for every 100 tests, 9.6% are coming back positive. So we've seen almost a doubling of the positivity rate. And that's a 7-day average. That's just not one day. That's a running 7-day average. And then the cases per 100,000 have increased at least 10%. It was around 18%, or 17 or 18 cases per 100,000. That's now at 26.9 cases per 100,000. So all of these are now what they're considered the purple tier or widespread tier. The mayor previously spoke about Project Roomkey, which indicates that there are 133 rooms currently under contract for Project Roomkey, of which 80 of them are occupied. So there's 53 rooms apparently that are under contract that are not currently occupied. Again, as the county explained, they're keeping some even though they're under contract, they are unoccupied because they are unavailable because they're being transitioned to Project. I got to differentiate that. This is Project Homekey. Not Roomkey. Navigation Center is full. The 10 beds that are in the emergency shelter are full, and the 10 that are in the transitional housing. And again, we're having to limit capacity of the Navigation Center from 30 to 20 due to COVID. Tulare, as I previously mentioned, Tulare County is clearly in the purple. It's not alone. There are 51 other counties that are also purple. There are only 6 counties that are not, 5 that are red and 1 that is orange. So with that, unless the council has any questions, it would be staff's recommendation that the council make its finding of continued declaration of local emergency for COVID-19.
Did council have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I just don't understand why there is not enforcement in our county. The city, I believe, is doing everything it can in order to protect our citizens and our residents. But if you're riding without a seatbelt, you're going to get stopped if you're out in the county. If you're speeding, you're going to get stopped out in the county. But if you are having a party with 100 to 200 people, oh, it's no problem. But that is actually a killer because they're spreading COVID. And I try to wrap my mind around it, and I just don't get it. We have had 3 extended family members who were not at their homes for Thanksgiving because they passed away from COVID. They were not older and elderly, they were younger people. And it passes very quickly to one another. And I don't understand why people don't want to protect one another. I wear this mask to protect you. I don't wear this mask really to protect myself because I'm usually indoors. And when I do go out, I wear a mask, but I protect for you. And really, the solution is in our hands. Of course, with God's help. You know, somebody told me, you know, God is going to protect us, and it's true, but he also wants us to do our part, and our part is to wear the mask, social distance, don't go to parties and gather. That's our responsibility, and we need to adhere to it, or we're never going to get out of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Did any council members have any further comment?
Mayor, I did.
Please.
So I'm not too sure if we have some information in regards to the governor's announcement in regards to the $500 million for new COVID relief grant businesses. When do we anticipate that being available for the public? And is there anything that our economic development team is going to be, in terms of the city, going to be helping with, in terms of maybe helping folks, supporting them and filling out the proper applications or paperwork, or is there any sort of education that we're going to push out for folks to benefit and try to apply for these funds?
Is the question specific to CDBG funding that has been approved by council?
No, it's in terms of the governor. I think yesterday the governor announced that there was going to be $500 million for new COVID relief grants, small businesses in the state of California, where nonprofits would also be eligible for these funds. I was just curious to know if there was, if there was any, you know, the staff was aware of this, and if we were going to be, was going to be any, like, if there's any sort of additional information from this funds that we're going to be able to support small businesses through the state.
Well, I will tell you that as the city manager, I have not received any communication from the state in that regard, and I'll defer to Mr. Ridenhour if he's received any through economic development.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. I have not received any information from the state, but I will state that we do meet with the different communities and agencies throughout the region weekly regarding how we can better assist businesses throughout Tulare County. And so we provide access and share information in regards to different trainings or assistance for the SBDC or different nonprofit agencies that can help businesses be assisted in applying for funds. So we will most definitely help get the information out once more information is released.
Yeah, I don't think it's been released yet.
We have not received anything
Yeah.
In writing or anything pertinent to specific details of his program.
Yeah, it's not out yet. The governor just announced it or talked about it. That's what he opened with, I believe, yesterday. I was watching that as well.
Yeah,
But I don't think there's anything out there yet official on it.
Yeah, he announced it on November the 30th that there would
Yeah.
be immediate assistance to businesses impacted by COVID-19, including a temporary tax relief.
It's immediate under the state's definition.
But there's nothing to say that that can't be something that the county has a part in
Yeah, that-
distributing, right?
There's nothing, but I think even it's hard to find any information from the state yet on it. It was
Correct.
just announced yesterday.
Yeah.
But I think I would imagine, I would hope, that it would come out shortly. Usually with the governor, he'll announce it. I've done this before. He'll mention something, you go to look for it, it's not quite there yet, but usually within the week, within a few days, you'll start to see information on their sites. So we should hopefully be able to get information about that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ridenhour, for providing that. I think, as more information comes our way, I know all of you at Economic Development are working hard to always push out the information in the community. So thank you.
I'm going to chime in because I know that economic development, that through any of the grant funding, any of the loans funding for the businesses, they've been very proactive in putting the information out and working with agencies and entities to help people in the community to fill out their applications, to complete their applications, to do the business plans, to submit everything in the criteria of some of the business applications. So there is a lot of service that is being done, and I'm appreciative to that. Okay, if there's no further, please.
If I may, I don't mean to reopen an item you already moved from, but it kind of goes I know there were comments with regards to park amenities and that sort of thing, but under COVID, really, this has been a core issue that the League of California Cities has had with the state and the federal government about how funds are going to be used for business assistance and other types of things. And so I think that can also be, if it's okay, maybe reinforce that statement in the letter of the budgetary that the broader effects of COVID be considered by the legislature, especially small business and what are those secondary impacts that are happening economically? Cities are talking about how they're being economically impacted, but that's because those that the revenues are generated from are being affected. So it's those, sometimes there may be better effect, the same stability for the governmental agencies if the underpinning of the businesses that go to generate those revenues are also being supported, so.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, John, for mentioning that. I think that should be definitely something we include in that letter. And definitely, there's a lot of people that are falling between the cracks of economic opportunities and relief. And I think we also need to focus on those businesses that are not maybe able to receive some of this relief. And I appreciate the governor including nonprofits, because from my understanding, it was difficult for a lot of nonprofits to apply in general to some of the funding that did come from the federal government and the state for the CARES Act. But I think that definitely should be a priority. And I'm not too sure how much the senator is pushing forward. I mean, I really haven't been in tune with what she's doing exactly, but I know she probably is doing some work. But I would definitely want to emphasize that, especially Porterville being one of the large cities in her district. So, yeah.
I would just add that if we're going to add that to the list, that it be above parks. That if a list, it doesn't have to be a priority list, but if it's going to be interpreted that way, I would put that above, at least for my 2 cents that I added about parks, that be above park amenities.
Do small businesses include the independent workers, or what do they call them? Is it independent?
Independent contractors or
Yeah. Are they part of the small businesses? Aren't they? They were separate, I know, when one of the.
It depends.
Councilmember Peñalosa kind of speaks to this. There was a lot of nuances in the qualifications for funding. Typically, from the federal funding standpoint, not all, typically we say 501c3s and people think of those, but there are others that are not 501c3s or 501c4s that were, even though they're nonprofits, they were not eligible because there were certain ones that were excluded from that. And so it ended up causing a lot of what I would say gymnastics, legal gymnastics occurring to try to figure out how to. There just wasn't an easy path to that, I guess. Even for those that qualify, there wasn't an easy path. And so, in terms of trying to ensure that assistance goes to where it's intended and needed to go and not delay. I mean, you've dealt with this same thing with CDBG. I mean, and we did it as fast as it could possibly done, and it still took a month and a half, almost 2 months to do that, and you're still going through gymnastics in your second tranche of funding. So, or they call it the third, but you're in your second tranche of funding. So, it's, I guess it just speaks to the broader, effectiveness and efficacy and how quickly it. But you're right. not being called small business when you're a self-employed hairstylist, as an
Yeah,
example,
that's-
an independent contractor or an independent operator.
Correct.
And actually, if I could add, that's why I don't like wish lists for myself, because I go down to the details of it. But with this, if we're going to have it in there, we might as well ask that if there is some kind of funding, that it's not limited to people who haven't received any sort of other funding, because the people we're talking about fit into those categories, kind of like we're mentioning, that they didn't qualify under certain things, or if they got a $500 grant, they couldn't get this $10,000 one that came from another pool of money. So if we can put on there that it's not limited to certain people, or limited to certain money if they've been eligible to other funds,
Right, yeah.
I think it would be a bigger help.
Letter just got longer.
Okay, but at least it's still there.
And important, very important.
All right. Thank you very much. If there's no further comment, discussion, I move that we continue the declaration order of local emergency.
Second.
When we have a second, no further discussion, please call for vote.
Councilmember Gurrola,
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye, passes unanimous, 5-0, thank you. Okay, we will now adjourn to a joint meeting of the Porterville City Council and the Porterville Public Improvement Corporation. It is 7:28. Roll call, please, directors.
Director Gurrola. Director Peñalosa,
Present.
Director Stowe,
Here.
Vice Chair Reyes,
Here.
Chairperson Flores.
Present. Do we have any written communication?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Are there any oral communications? Have any been submitted electronically?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. We will now go into the Joint City Council and Public Improvement Corporation scheduled matter.
Thank you, Your Honor, and this has been, as the council's aware, this has been several months in coming to tonight's action that is proposed. With us this evening is your representative financial advisors and bond counsel and the team that's been working together over the last several months to get to this evening's proposed action, which would be looking to finance not more than $36 million for water capital improvements. The council will recall that back on June 16th of earlier this year, it adopted a resolution initiating this process, which spoke to a $50 million, up to $50 million as a potential bonding effort. And with that, when that resolution was adopted, there's essentially a 60-day look-back period from that as well, saying that by adopting that resolution, any eligible costs could be reimbursed through this bonding effort that had occurred 60 days prior to June 16th. As we've gone through the analysis of the city's water fund bonding capacity, that's been established at $44.5 million. That is not what is being asked of the city council and the corporation this evening. The proposed funding is, again, not to exceed $36 million. Within that bonding is a number of capital projects that are close to fruition. Most notably, we have the partnership project between the Tule River Tribe and the city of Porterville on the development of a wastewater treatment, tertiary treatment recycled water facility on city property adjacent to the tribe's 40 acres where they'll be developing their casino resort, where we will be doing approximately a 500,000 gallon a day treatment facility that will treat water to be used on the sports complex, and then in turn Less water is actually being used by, proposed to be used by the casino resort. That project is 100% designed. It is ready to go to construction. And again, the estimated cost on that, right now, construction estimates is $17 million. The tribe does have a proportional share of that, and there would be a repayment agreement that would be established between the tribe and the city for their proportional share of that, which is estimated at about $6 million. 5 to 10 million, and I do want to note as part of that, that all of these bond funds are being done as tax exempt, and that a portion of those proceeds would be covered by the city if necessary, so that there isn't any legal question in that regard. There's also and I'm going to say it's a $5 to $10 million. There's a couple of different, there's a proposed project that may mitigate some of these costs, but it's a $5 to $10 million development of a recharge retention basin in that area, which would account for the drainage as well as the city's recharge desires in this area in conjunction with its Sigma goals. And so that's another capital project. So just alone in those two projects is $22 to $27 million of the $35 million estimate. There are a number of other large-scale water capital projects that are as part of the proposed project that's already been, that's part of the preliminary official statement. We have water wells and other recharge basins, and then most notably, significant capital improvements of the wastewater treatment facility itself, the main, I guess you call it, the main headquarters, the main treatment plant, which we're looking at an estimated $60 million project to upgrade that plant to third treatment or tertiary treatment, so that we're able to use all of our water either in water exchanges or irrigation of city parks, or as the council's aware, you had a feasibility study that was presented to you almost a year ago now, this year. So with that, staff recommends that the city council, also sitting as the board of directors of the Porterville Public Improvement Corporation, approve the draft resolution approving the form and authorizing the direct execution of the installment sale financing documents, and authorizing direct distribution of the preliminary official statement in connection with the offering and sales certificates of participation. And I do want to note that preliminary official statement will change. In fact, it's changed from the draft that was contained in here. There are going to be modifications that happen to it, and what is recommended as part of this is that the city council and the board of directors authorize those modifications as deemed necessary, and authorize the mayor, president, city manager, executive director, and finance to execute all necessary documents. As I shared, you have the financing team that's been working alongside, and I also want to at this time also express my appreciation to the ad hoc committee, who has spent a lot of time. We've been meeting almost on a monthly basis, if not more, in this effort. So thank you to Councilmember Grola and Peñalosa for their time on that as well. And happy to, I guess, there is a presentation that's been provided for the council, and I can see Mr. Levine very much wanting to at least say a couple words on behalf of the team.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John. And as usual, I don't think you left me much to say. That was a very good, concise lead into the actual financing. I had several thoughts on that to present, but you did it articulately, beautifully. So with that, having said, we can get right into the fact that the market continues extremely strong for issuing of municipal bonds, particularly tax-exempt bonds. And we anticipate that market will continue. I'll let Nikki Tallman, who's here tonight with Brandis Tallman, now a division of Oppenheimer, and congratulations to them for having accomplished that nice situation. Talk a little bit about the market and a little bit about how the structure of the bond issue has been put together. We've worked on coming up with what we think is the most efficient structure that would provide the required funds for the projects. And if is there any way to get that on the screen? The presentation we had. If not, you all have hard copies, or you have it on your screen. If you turn to page 3, that will show you the basic structure of the certificates of participation. Basically, the amount of project funds that are needed, net of all net of all costs, are going to be 35 million. So if you look up at the top, you see the sources, and you'll notice that the par amount of bonds, based on the structure that we're talking about using for this particular issue, is 30,745,000, and that there's a premium of 4,902,000 that's going to be generated at the sale of the bonds. I'll let Nikki go into a little more detail on how that works, but the bottom line is sometimes you have the opportunity to issue bonds at a higher coupon rate than the market rate of interest, but sell them at the market rate of interest, and therefore you're selling those bonds for greater than par. So you're taking a bond, $1,000 bond, and you're selling it for $1,100 or $1,200 to equal the yield that the market requires. That has the benefit to the city of being able to generate more funds for less bonds being issued. You pay a little bit higher interest coupon rate, but the difference between that and the fact that you're issuing, in this case, 5 million or 6 million less in bonds that's necessary is a big benefit. And that's the circumstances with the market today. And again, I can let Nikki go into a little bit more detail on that. So you can see that with the sale of 35 million, producing 35,647,000, 35 million is then put in the project fund that is held by a trustee and is drawn down by the city as the project continues its completion. It also, at the initial issue, pays the cost of issuance, which we're estimating at $250,000, the underwriter's discount of $207,000. Now, we may or may not use bond insurance. We're doing this on a conservative analysis. So assuming we're going to do bond insurance, that would cost $134,000, and a surety bond would be $53,000. The bond insurance is issued in the event that the city's rating is such that bond insurance will increase the rating when the bonds are sold, and if it's worth the cost of paying that premium to get a lower interest rate, and the debt service pays that premium and then gives you excess, then we move ahead with doing bond insurance. The surety is an interesting situation because many bond issues require a reserve fund. The reserve fund would have to be funded with cash, and that would cause the issue to be issued higher. Usually, the reserve fund is funded with 1 year's debt service, which you'll see in a minute is roughly $1.8 million. So by issuing a surety bond or buying a surety bond for $53,000 upfront one-time payment, you save the $1.8 million in bond issuance and all the interest that would be paid over a 30-year period. It's a very positive situation to do. So that would use up the balance of the money that is being raised through the sale. As you can see, the total there would equal to $35,645,000, which is what we have up at the top. There's a couple of $1,000s extra that would be left over into the cost of issuance fund for miscellaneous expenses. If you go to the next.
Excuse me, just for a second.
Sure.
That's just an effect of rounding. That balance would be released to the city at the close of the transaction.
Right, either released to the city or put into, usually it's put into the cost of issuance fund, and then if it's not used, flows to pay debt service. So in effect, goes to the city, yes. Okay, next page. Okay, Nikki, you want to walk us through this debt service schedule, which points out the premiums that are being utilized?
Sure, I can. Good evening. I'm Nikki Tallman of Brandes Tallman Oppenheimer, and we are the underwriter for the bonds. So it's our job to help to structure the bond issue, to market the bonds, and to sell the bonds. We will underwrite any unsold balances of the bonds, but it's our job to market and sell the city's debt. As Bud said, we are in a period of historically low interest rates. As a matter of fact, in August of this year, we hit all-time lows on the Municipal Market Data Index, which is the index that all tax-exempt municipal bonds price from. So we are right along the bottom of the yield curve. And that fact, along with the fact that many people are wanting to purchase tax-exempt bonds, people are investing in bond funds. Bond funds have a lot of money. There are consistent inflows into bond funds. And so the funds have to purchase municipal bonds. So there's a demand for the bonds, a period of historically low interest rates. And this is really keeping pressure on interest rates being low. The bond funds want a coupon rate. They want as high as possible of a coupon rate, of interest rate payment, and they are willing to pay more for the bonds than the face value. And that allows them to keep a higher coupon rate, but it drives the yield down toward these historic lows. So you can see the coupon rate on the bonds is estimated to be 4%, and that's the interest rate that the bonds will pay. And the investors are willing to pay a premium, to pay more for the bonds than the face value, which drives the yield down, again, toward the market and historically low rates. This generates a premium. So when we sell the bonds, more money will come in than the face value, which is a great benefit to issuers at this point in the market because they don't need to issue as much debt to maintain the level of proceeds for their project fund. So you can see the yields are expected to be below 1% in the early years, just above 0.5% as a matter of fact, and then they escalate to about 2.5%. So to get a 30-year tax-exempt bond for 2.5%, we think is pretty incredible. The investors are continuing to have interest to purchase the bonds. There's demand for tax-exempt bonds, again, keeping yields very low. So we think it's an excellent time in the market to issue, and I think that's reflected in the interest rates that these bonds will secure. The debt service that's generated, it's approximately 1.79 million per year of debt service, and that's just about a little bit lower than we've been projecting through the period of 6 months or 9 months that we've been working on the debt service estimates. If there are any questions, I'm happy to field them.
Thank you. Council, did you have any questions?
Well, we have a little bit more to present here too. So.
Thank you.
So if we go to the next slide, which is a required disclosure that I think started about 6-8 months ago, maybe a year ago, that we are required to provide to the city at this stage in the process where you're approving moving forward. And what this is a best estimate provided by Municipal Advisor, which is Wolf Hansen, and with help from the underwriter, which you just heard from Nikki at the Brandis Tallman. And there's 4 key elements that we have to provide to you in disclosure. Number 1 is the true interest cost of the certificates. Now, Nikki just went through the process of showing you the 4% coupon rate, and with the rates going from under the 0.66% all the way to 2.57, that produces an average interest cost over the life of the issue, lower. they will provide a true interest cost of the certificates of roughly at 3%, 3.01%. The second thing we have to go over with you are the finance charges. And as we sit here now, we're looking at a total of $650,000 broken out by cost of issuance, which is bond counsel, disclosure counsel, municipal advisor, trustee, rating agency, and any other costs of any other consulting costs that might arrive as part of the process. In addition, the underwriter's discount at $210,000 and the bond insurance, surety bond, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. If that's needed, $190,000, so that our estimate is the $650,000, and that's consistent with what we showed in the sources and uses a couple of slides back. In addition, we need to show, and this we can be pretty sure of, the net proceeds to be received will be, one way or the other, $35 million. So that's a pretty good estimate. We know that that's right where it's going to be. The total payment amount through maturity, based on that schedule that we just showed in the previous slide, is estimated to be $55 million. Now, if interest rates go up and we have to issue the certificates at a higher interest rate, then obviously that $55 million will be a little bit higher. If, on the other hand, the interest rates stay where they are, go a little bit lower, the total payment through maturity again will be a little bit less than $55 million. And this last paragraph is just the normal disclaimers that you see on any type of projections that are made. Only these are projections that are required by the government codes. So any questions on that? Okay, let's go to the next slide, which I think will be of interest. Now, this is the slide that Brandis Tallman prepared, and I'll go over a little bit of it, and then I'll let Nikki pick up and go through the process. This now is showing what the debt service coverage is going to be when you issue these certificates. And that's relevant because that's the way the certificates are basically sold. Investors want to know that there's sufficient revenue coming in after the receipt of the gross revenues from the sale of water, less the expenses to deliver that water, leave an amount available to pay debt service. And they require a coverage, what is called a debt service coverage. Basically, that means that you have to generate something in excess of the debt service payment to give security and comfort to anybody buying the bonds or any agency rating the bonds, that there is sufficient revenues being generated to not only pay the debt service, but also to pay the debt service in the event there are unusual circumstances that either cause an increase in expenses or a reduction in revenues. And when the bonds are structured and when the bond documents are put together, there's a debt service covenant that is part of the bond documents. The debt service covenant is when you're approving these documents, you are agreeing that the city will maintain a certain minimum level of debt service coverage, or you will take steps to cure that and to make sure that the coverage is there in the future. And that debt service coverage for most revenue bonds issued is anywhere from 1.20 to 1.30. These bonds will be issued, these certificates will be issued as your other sewer and water issues have been issued at a 1.25 debt service covenant. So therefore, the coverage ratio must stay at 1.25 or above. To put the debt service coverage in another frame of reference, it really is saying for every $1 million, if you're at a 1.25 coverage, for every $1 million in debt that you have, you need to be generating amount available to pay that debt service of $1,250,000. If it's a 1.4 coverage, then you'd have to generate $1,400,000 for that million. Now, if you take a look at this table, You can see in the bold the debt service coverage on the left-hand side under the column labeled Water Fund. And you can see that beginning in 2016, that coverage was at 3.53. And then in 17, these are all off your audited financial statements, 10.66. That's 10 times the amount you need, not 1.25. And then it was 12.23, then it was 12.09. And this year, on your unaudited numbers, as you're getting ready to issue these certificates, your coverage is 13.20. Now, if you'll jump over to the column under projected up at the top, fiscal year end FYE 2022, you can see that that's the first year that the bond debt service payments will be required under the new certificates that would be issued if you approve moving forward. And you can see on the left under debt service on that column, right above total debt service, the 2021 water revenue bonds. And then you read across, and there's the $1,789,515 that Nikki was talking about. She used $1.8 million as the rounded up number. And you can see that that $1,785,000 will then is estimated to produce a debt service coverage of 2.76, well above the 1.25 minimum required. That 2.67 will go to it will impress the rating agencies that this is a very solid issue, and we're looking forward to receiving a very strong rating. It will also be utilized when Nikki's firm is selling the bonds to show to potential investors that this is a very solid issue. Now, the other thing that this chart shows is, and John referenced it in his staff report, is debt capacity. Once you've issued these bonds or these certificates, how much more could you issue and still maintain either a minimum coverage of 125 or a recommended coverage where you would have a very strong issue of 1.50. And with that, before I get myself into too much trouble explaining something that Nikki put together, let me go ahead and turn it over to her to talk about how she developed the debt capacity analysis.
Stay in your lane.
Right, and that's an excellent summary of the chart so far. And we just added a layer to that. We wanted to determine on a very conservative basis what the bonding capacity for this enterprise fund is. And we do it on both a 125 coverage factor, which again is the covenant that will be in the bond documents, and on a 1.5, a 150 coverage factor. The higher the coverage factor, the better the credit is perceived. That's one factor. S&P as a rating agency will look at coverages above 150 as very strong, and maybe between 125 and 150 as strong. So we want to look at the different levels of debt service coverage. And really we want to also see what can the city issue in the future as it may continue to need capital improvement projects that would be financed. So we calculated on a very conservative basis that for 150 coverage, the city could issue 36 million in bonds. And with that issuance, still have capacity in 5 years from now to issue additional bonds if it were needed for additional capital improvements. Industry standard is to put a buffer in these calculations, and that's because, and I think we're seeing it this year more than ever, we never know what we don't know could happen in the market. So we could be rolling into the market 1 month, and by the end of the month, maybe investors are requiring a higher interest rate, or investors no longer want to go 30 years and we have to scale back to a 25-year term. Now, we don't expect that, but we do want to plan for it when we're looking at a bonding capacity report. So the city is very strong, and I think the rating agency will see that. The enterprise fund is very strong, and has bonding capacity at this point in excess of 36 million. And even with that issue, we'll have some additional capacity in the future if it's needed.
Can I just add that in the meeting, that's one of the things that we discussed, was that we wanted to be as conservative as possible and to allow future councils and as the city grows, that if it needed that additional funding, it would be available for them, rather than going for the full $44 million, or even 50 if we wanted to, because our credit rating is so good.
Thank you.
And if I can, there are certain restrictions even beyond that. And I know that this was, Councilmember Grola mentioned this at a previous meeting, that with the issuance of bonds, there's an expectation that within 3 years, there'll be 85% expenditure of funds. And so a little bit of this is looking at the projects and what's the likelihood of them being completed in the timeframes that you need to and funds expended. We know that we have, and I referenced it, the $60 million project at the wastewater treatment facility, which, what I think this demonstrates very well is that in a 5-year horizon, which is when I would see, so obviously that's beyond 3 years. In that 5 to 10 year horizon is when the further upgrades of the wastewater treatment facility will be, it's reasonable to expect it would occur. And what you see here is that there will be additional bonding capacity to help. So we're going to start this process, and as those projects become ready for construction and ready to begin, that there will be, already this is telling you that there's going to be some capacity to start moving that, in addition to cash on hand. So, and I mentioned this before, we're trying to do 3 things at one time, and it's a matter of just trying to, we have in the water fund as an enterprise itself does a lot of different things. And it does your pipe projects. We have Henderson Avenue right now that's we're putting purple pipe in without actually having the plant running, but we're trying to be ahead. So while while the streets are open, put this infrastructure in place. And there's approximately $1 million just in Henderson Avenue right now in water and purple pipe components there. Plus you have other recharge basins. I mean, we've had to retool our, Sigma has caused us to have to retool how we approach, with doing recharge and things of that nature. So we're having to do new pipe in replacement projects. We're having to do new projects, and also converting over to this recycled water, all through this same thing. So trying to do all 3 things at one time. And I think what this demonstrates well is that there is a way that I think this can be achieved in a reasonable 5 to 10 year time frame, knowing that you have some additional capacity there. And I think that's been well demonstrated by Ms. Tallman.
Thank you.
Yeah, I might add, John, that in addition to certain other requirements and covenants in the bonds, you have the debt service coverage covenant. You also have a parity test covenant. In the event that you do need to issue more bonds, you want to, if at all possible, issue them on parity with the existing bonds that you would have by then issued. And that parity test also is a 1.25. So that 1.25 coverage is the minimum coverage that you would have to demonstrate by adding additional bonds to your issuance in the future. And again, as we discussed in the ad hoc committee, and Virginia emphasized that she felt much more comfortable if, at the time we would be issuing bonds in the future, that they be something greater than the 1.25 to give that extra coverage and comfort. However, the 1.25 is a good number to look at in the event you really needed a project that was desperately needed by the city in the water enterprise to be able to issue that, as long as you could meet that 1.25. And this shows the amount that you would be able to do.
Thank you. Council, did you have any questions?
I just wanted to add again that when we were looking at the projects, and I want to thank Mr. Knight and Mr. Sanchez, because we had to turn to them to ask, are you going to be able to do these projects with this money within the 3 to 5 years? 3 years for the 85%, and then to finish up those projects. And they came back, informing us of what projects could be done. So we don't want to put too much on staff as well, because we're going to be committed to this. So I do want to thank the staff for all the work that they did, especially the finance team led by Mr. Levine. They brought us information and explained things very well. We're not having to go out and raise rates right now. I mean, we're able to go in and do this. This bond allows for projects to be completed that are needed in this city, and also places us in a very good position in terms of what we're doing with water, tertiary treatment plant, and all the other things that we have planned for the future. So I think this is the best that we could do. And as I said, the city really has a very good rating, and the councils have always been conservative with the taxpayers' money, and we continue to do that now.
And I appreciate it is a point on December 10th, Mr. Knight, myself will be working with the team here. We'll be having our ratings call as with Standard & Poor's, where they'll ask us lots of questions. Maria will be an important part of that as well, and talking about the finances. So we don't know what the rating is, but I think as Mr. Levine and Ms. Tolman indicated, we are expecting a favorable rating based on the financial stability of the fund.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you to the ad hoc committee and to the financial advisors. And I'm going to ask Councilmember Stowe if he has any comment, any question.
Not at this time, Your Honor, but I want to thank staff as well as the finance team for putting this together, and I think it's a very good presentation and a very good deal. So
Thank you
very much.
Councilmember Peñalosa.
Thank you, Mayor. Just thank you so much to everyone that worked so hard to get this rolling out. And, I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to take. And there's a lot of good things that are out of this that are going to just go beyond, our time, like in terms of the benefits that this is going to provide to the community in the long term. So, thank you for your support, and I really, really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
No, just to echo some of those same comments, I appreciate those who helped to lay this out so clearly, great detail, and I think it's great to look at what our positioning is, that we're financially in a spot to be able to have a good rating. Appreciate all the time that went into this.
There is a lot of work. It looks like Mr. Knight and Mr. Sanchez are going to have work cut out for them. And with that being said, if there's no further discussion, no further questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I would move for approval of as presented by staff on the recommendations.
I'll second.
We have a motion and we have a second. No further discussion. Please call for vote.
Councilmember and Director Gurrola,
Aye.
Councilmember and Director Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember and Director Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor and Vice Chair Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores, and Chair.
Aye.
Mayor and Chair Flores.
Aye. It passes unanimous 5-0. Thank you.
And if I may, I want to thank Mr. Lawless for the work that he's done in bringing this together.
Well, what I was just going to say, she's always quiet. She doesn't show you her video. But
She never lets me see
she's
her.
but Maria also does a lot behind the scenes. There's a lot of reporting requirements and reports that she needs to file. And I appreciate the comments, but I want to express them to Maria. There's a lot of reporting. Mr. Levine talked about that. Reporting requirements. There's been bad deals done. You sometimes read about that. Even in our own county, we have cities that have done things that they shouldn't have done with their enterprise funds, and so those restrictions have tightened up. And I appreciate all the work that Ms. Bemis does very quietly. She complains a little bit to me, but I just want to say thanks for all that she does.
She needs to show her face more.
Yeah.
Yes, she does. I'll call her out this evening. Okay, we will now adjourn to the meeting of City Council, and that is at 8:07. Are there any oral communications? See that there are none in the audience. Do we have any that were sent in electronically?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. We will now go into other matters. Councilmember Garola.
Ms. Lou, are you going to be at the meeting next Tuesday? By Zoom. Oh, by Zoom. Oh. Okay, well, I just want to thank you for the years that I've worked with you. You've always represented the city very well. So since next week will be my last meeting and I won't see you face to face, I really want to say thank you. We were together for at least 10 years. And you've always kept the city above board. Thank you.
Councilmember Stowe.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. I hope all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I want to congratulate the council candidates and those who won that position. And I think Mayor Flores and Kelly Carrillo, I assume it's final. I've got several calls that it was final, so congratulations to the two of you. And the next 3 months are going to be very intense with the COVID and what's going on. So I beg you all to stay safe and stay positive and test negative.
Thank you. Councilmember Peñalosa.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to wish everybody a great night and please stay safe. And my condolences to the folks that passed away, Mr. Roman and Mr. Mena. I personally knew Luis Mena, and when I was at Portobello College, we were in the same club, and it was sad to hear of his passing and the loss of life there. So, in addition, I just want to once again, it's gonna, like what Councilmember Stowe mentioned, it's gonna be an intense next couple of months, and I just really want to just emphasize folks to do what's right and follow the guidelines and really be careful when you are going to go outdoors and considering gathering socially, just be mindful of the increase of cases across the nation and unfortunately the increase of deaths too. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. And like some of the other members of council, I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday season as we move into the holiday season. And of course, as some of the council members have mentioned, there are still the perils of life and things that happen, terrible tragedies, even COVID aside. And just try to watch out for each other and take care of each other, and we'll all be able to make it through these next months, which do appear to be looking to tighten down things a little bit. We do have some positive news in the form of vaccines and things, but you know what they say, as you're driving close to home, it's some of the most treacherous time when you're in the car. So just because we have something on the horizon doesn't mean take your eye off the ball, and definitely don't take your foot off the pedal. Everything you're doing, just keep doing it, because we need everybody when we're out of this thing. So just try and take care.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the officer that's in the back for attending the meeting. He's been very quiet.
Actually, he's got a different rank.
Yes.
No, he's got a different rank than officer.
I'd like to know what it is. All right, that's good news.
Wanted to wish him good.
Congratulations on that. Look at you. Is that why you were attending the meeting, hoping for the recognition? Yes, you were. Yes, you were. And I knew who you were, but I wasn't going to call you out. And I was just trying, and I kept hearing he has a different rank. Okay, you want to talk about it?
Well, I wanted to congratulate him and bring light to that. So.
Thank you so much. And I want to appreciate everybody that came on with their picture. Look at that. I didn't have to do roll call this evening.
Mayor?
Yes? Yes?
If I may interrupt, for the benefit of us who can't see the officer in the back, who is he and what's his rank? Did he just get promoted, or?
We'll find out right now from Chief Crodel.
Councilmember Stowe, if I could, I would absolutely enjoy introducing Lieutenant Rick Carrillo. Lieutenant Carrillo has been with our department for an extremely long time. We just went through a testing process, and as you can see by the new bars on his collar, he did extremely well in the testing process. Pretty easy decision for him this time. And he was just promoted this morning. So today's his very first day.
Right.
And he's there because he drew the night watch, and the night watch commander, that's where they go on Tuesday night.
Well, I can't see the stripes from here, okay? He's way, way, way in the back.
Well, all I can say is, go Rick. Go Rick.
All right.
Congratulations. Good for you.
Chief Lapierre, are you eating?
Not anymore, I'm not. I was having a little bit of sustenance, just to.
Okay, all right. I see Jason there again. Mr. Ridenhour, you changed from here. I mean, okay. Mr. Moore, how are you? Okay, that looks good. Mr. Bartow, you have that wonderful backdrop.
I do. And Dave, you were eating, it's still right here.
I was going to mention that it is actually December 1st, so it's no longer November.
Okay. Mr. Sanchez, how are you? Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
It was a nice one, a quiet one, but nice spending it at home.
Oh, that's wonderful. Maria, I know you're not going to turn your little photo on, but we want to thank you for all the things that you do. Okay? I know you're going to stay muted because you're not going to get into the conversation. Oh, look out!
No, thank you. Thank you so much, John, especially. I appreciate you.
Oh, know that Mr. Lapierre went off. Okay. I want to thank each and every one of you in your departments for all the work that you do. There's so much gratitude. I talk to Patrice a lot, and the real Mr. Knight, when I see him. That is great and that is wonderful, but you are to be commended and appreciated as you oversee your staff and who you work with. Know that the work does not go unnoticed. Thank you for everything. Mr. Lawless.
Yeah, I appreciate the council's comments, and I wanted to personally thank Chief Lapierre. Your public safety folks are every day dealing with COVID-related calls, and we did have an incident in the fire department last week, and it caused a bit of a stir. We did have a positive case, and the reason I want to say thanks is that there's been protocols put in place that even with a group that works so closely together and for 48 hours at a shift, it was restricted just to that one individual. And so I think that speaks to the care that's been taken by he and his staff to put protocols in place to, even with that and having 48 hours together in such a close, as they work kind of uniquely, that it didn't, and for that I'm appreciative, and I know he is as well. There was a collective sigh of relief on a number of cases that it, but that's, but I just want to say thanks and I mean, with all of the challenges of the last 10 months, that kind of speaks to still the continued diligence that has been demonstrated in the professionalism of the department.
Thank you, Mr. Lawless. I appreciate that. And I'll make sure that my staff and everyone understands that.
I hope they do. Thanks. And this Friday, another unique opportunity. Typically, we would be hosting, the city would be hosting the First Friday Coffee at Galaxy Theaters, and we'd be hearing a state of the city, which we will hear again, but it will be in a much different, I think the mayor plans to do it from the seat that you see right now and do it virtually, and we'll see how this goes. We haven't, there's no blueprint to how this is going to work, but I do appreciate the mayor and Mr. Weidenauer and the other departments have been coordinating together on a presentation that we'll be coordinating with the mayor on Friday, and hopefully the council's able. It's kind of at an odd time apparently. It's 8 to 9 o'clock instead of the typical time frame. So, plus I'm also told that it will be a little bit different this year. The state of the city and the state of the county will also be part of this year's. So Supervisor Townsend will also be making a presentation this Friday morning. So with that, I just want to say thanks.
Thank you. Chief Crodel, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Okay, you looked real pensive there. And thank you for the introduction of the gentleman in the back. And with that being said, we will go back into closed session.
Yes, no expected reportable action out of that.
Thank you. It is 8:18. We will go into closed session.